Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first edition of the Missouri School Boards Association's Open Session program. Open Session is a new series of conversations on issues of interest to school board members and other education leaders throughout our state, and we're glad you could join us for this first edition of our series. Our topic for this program is one that school districts throughout the state are facing right now regarding the coronavirus outbreak. And the fact that schools are closed throughout our state at the moment, and that is dealing with vendors and businesses in their community that they might have contracts with, and how to go about paying them and what the school district's obligations are. And here with me to discuss that issue is MSBA Associate Executive Director and Staff Attorney, Susan Goldammer. And Susan, thanks a lot for being with us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
First of all, Susan, schools are closed, of course, across our state, and districts aren't using the products and services they contracted for. But these vendors, they're struggling themselves right now, and they want to be paid. So what should our school districts be thinking about?
Well, first and foremost, school board members and administrators need to remember that they are obligated to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. These dollars were levied for the education of the students. And we recognize that there are a lot of people hurting across the country right now. But board members and administrators really need to focus on their mission. And they need to remember why taxpayers agreed to collect these dollars. And that was to educate students. The school district is not supposed to be using its money as an economic stimulus. The district's mission is not to keep businesses afloat or in the black. The district's mission is to ensure the best education for the district's children. And although we think that K-12 education will be spared from withholdings, at least this first round that have been announced by the governor, we also know, based on statements made by the governor, that next year's budget is going to get cut. And we're hoping K-12 isn't hurt too badly on next year's budget, but it's going to be a very difficult one to draft at this point in time. And so districts really need to be careful about how they're spending their dollars and make sure that they're only paying if they absolutely have to.
So, Susan, should our school boards and administrators be talking with their attorneys about the existing contracts that they have with businesses?
Yes, this issue is way more complicated than even some very seasoned administrators realize. First, before the district pays at all, the district needs to make sure that there is a binding contract. Just because a piece of paper says it's a contract doesn't mean that it is a legal binding contract. State law requires that school boards adopt those contracts. So just because it looks like a contract, it doesn't mean that the district has a legal obligation to pay under the document. Next, you have to read the contract and to determine if the vendor is actually owed. A lot of contracts only require payment if services are rendered or products are delivered. And in this day and age, those aren't happening. Some contracts allow either party to terminate with a week's notice. So the district might not be obligated at all under the contract. And even if a contract does exist, there are some very specific legal defenses that districts might have, and attorneys would be very useful. The local district's attorney is going to be very useful in helping the district navigate that. And then finally, school districts need to remember they have a lot of negotiating power. School districts are excellent customers. That's why lots of vendors want to do business with them. That's why they bid out a lot of contracts, is to give the opportunity for many vendors to compete for their business. School districts pay their bills, and that is very valuable for vendors. And so you do have some ability to negotiate, particularly in situations where a vendor's actual operating expenses have been reduced because the services aren't being provided or the products aren't being delivered. We want to make sure that vendors don't get a windfall as well. And so given the unusual circumstances, school districts do have a lot of negotiation and should consider exercising that.
Now, Susan, of course, we do have a new federal law in place, the CARES Act, that was passed by Congress. And isn't there a provision in there that requires school districts to pay vendors?
Yes, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act was passed by the U.S. Congress on March 27th, and it is shortened, of course, to the CARES Act. It is a $2 trillion economic stimulus bill. That is the largest stimulus bill the United States has ever seen, and included in that is $13.5 billion that's going to be distributed to the states, and probably in the same proportion as the Title I funding across the country. One part of the law requires districts to continue to pay contractors and employees, but what MSBA is encouraging districts to do is do not write that check right now, okay? First of all, the law doesn't go into effect until the end of April. And second of all, we've got a whole string of questions that have been posed both to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and also to the United States Department of Education, trying to understand the implications of that particular provision. Just because that's in the law doesn't mean that the district is legally obligated to write the check. And we're telling districts, given the economic future that we are expecting, to please be very thoughtful and don't make promises until we're absolutely sure.
And Susan, regarding the CARES Act, as you said, it is a massive stimulus bill that's been passed, a lot of provisions, several of them do affect K-12 education. We can't get into all of those during this conversation, but we do have resources on that posted on the MSBA website, along with a lot of other good resources relating the coronavirus situation we're going through right now. So our members need to take advantage of those resources, don't they?
Absolutely. Please, on the very front page of our webpage is a link to the COVID-19 resources, and the legal department at MSBA is constantly updating that several times a week with based on questions that we're getting from school districts and concerns that are popping up. We're trying to get information out to school districts on issues such as sunshine law and graduation and personnel contracts and how this certain circumstance is impacting all of those issues. So please do check our website.
All right, Susan Goldammer, thank you so much for being with us on this first edition of MSBA's Open Session. And we'll be producing these programs on a regular basis, at least through the duration of the coronavirus pandemic. Perhaps beyond that, and we hope you'll be able to join us for future programs. For now, so long from Columbia.